What's up, everyone? We're just going to be looking at this client clarity and state of the game. Whenever Riot releases a blog post or a video, something like that, or maybe something that you guys think I should react to, something that they released that I didn't take a look at, please let me know in the comments, because I definitely will do this. So we're going to be watching this. I don't think the league is in the right state right now, but I think it's definitely going to the right state. Season 10 was very, very bad in terms of ranked competitive play, so I hope that's what they're talking about. I'm not going to pause too much, just a little bit, but without further ado, I mean, this is unedited. Let's get into it.
Hey all, it's Jess, executive producer on League of Legends. You might have noticed the title of this video is a little bit different than usual. It used to be called Riot Please. We've tried this format out for about 4 years, and obviously since then we've launched a ton of games. And so what we want to do is still use this format or this venue to be able to talk to you about what's coming up, but also be able to give more dedicated time to each of the games so we can actually give everyone breathing room. Today, we're going to be focusing on LoL PC, the MOBA, and cover 3 topics. First is going to be the state of the game. Second is going to be the client. And third is going to be game clarity. Now I'm going to hand it off to Andre, who's going to talk about state of the game.
Hey folks, my name's Andre, and I'm the game director for League of Legends. We're going to be talking today about how the preseason item update went, and the overall state of the game right now. Looking at items first off, we think we've got in place a system that should allow some good increases to choice and diversity for most champions. At the moment though, individual item balance is often overshadowing what could be interesting choices. Items like Sunfire or Gore Drinker have just been universally good choices for the damage or healing they bring. And so one of their first priorities has been chipping items like that down so they're not just dominating in terms of raw stats. On the other side of things, we've then also got some items that just haven't been delivering. So we've been doing work on things like Chemtech Putrefier, which we've been broadening the feasible users there. In addition to that stuff, we're also looking at adding some new non-mythic items to fill in some gaps. A couple of examples of those are an enchanter item we're trying that's meant to be good against dive or anti-carry heavy teams, or a tank item aimed at countering split pushes, so that even if you're not a split pushing champion yourself or able to just 1v1 a split pushing trend or whatever, there's still a good item to turn to in those situations. Let's look at mythic items in a bit more detail. One of the things we particularly want to avoid is when champions are hard bound to a particular mythic. We're defining hard binding as when a champion buys that item in 75% or more of their games. Sunfire is a good example of that, with a lot of tanks buying Sunfire in 80% plus of their games. Post nerfs, that's down to about 45%, which we think is a lot healthier. Fighters and assassins are also purchasing a pretty wide range of options in most cases. And marksmen are in a fairly reasonable spot, with all 3 of the mythics aimed particularly at them. On the other end of things, enchanters and mages, by contrast, we think need some more work on their mythic items, both in terms of the satisfaction from purchasing them and some of the actual choice architecture as well. Let's talk about a hot topic this year now, the amount of burst damage in League. Our goal with the preseason was to not increase the amount of burst damage in the game. Some of our initial tuning and design with items, however, did result in burst going up. As a result, we've gone back and we've removed a bunch of that systemic front-loaded damage, making changes to things like Duskblade, Lichbane, Luden's Echoes, etc. We're still monitoring and talking about burst pretty actively. We think it's probably acceptable, though very much on the high side, but might end up taking a bit more out of the game in the moderate future. And on a related topic to burst damage, we should talk a bit about systemic healing in League.
Yeah.
Healing that comes from items and runes. We do think healing has an important place in the game. Without sustain, some of the lane trades can end up just being so punishing that you get forced back too easily, and the game snowballs massively. But we don't want it to be invalidating a lot of play and decision making, like it can when overtuned. Some of our item changes ended up introducing more systemic healing than we felt was healthy for the game. And that results in things like grievous wounds feeling too mandatory and chip damage just not mattering. As a result, we've gone back and we've hit some of those sources of healing, things like Moonstone, Ravenous Hunter, Gore Drinker, Ravenous Hydra, etc. For some, straight nerfs. For others, we've wanted to shift some of that power towards durability in other forms. Let's shift gears now and talk about role strength in LoL, and how that's going at the moment. We want to ensure that all the different positions have a meaningful impact on the outcome of the match. Some positions will be more about scaling, or roaming, or vision control, or whatever than others, but every position should be relevant. When we first launched the preseason though, Marksmen and Enchanters were in too weak a spot, so we've gone and made some changes to give them some more early impact. Junglers, on the other hand, were in too impactful a spot, overly deciding games by themselves, and so we've gone and removed some gold and XP. Finally, let's talk about snowballing rates in League. Whenever we do a major update like a preseason, snowball is one of the things we track particularly carefully. From what we've seen, looking at the metrics we track, snowball rates before and after preseason are very similar, so we think we're doing okay there. Having said that, this is also one of the things we'd like to focus on more in the future, get to an even better spot if possible. And so comeback mechanics especially are one of our potential focuses for this year's coming preseason. We particularly want to address cases where you're behind and it just sort of feels a bit hopeless. It's unclear what you should do to get back in the game. Or it's clear, but it's basically just wait for the other team to screw up. So we're exploring ways to give a losing team plays they can try and make when things aren't going their way. Thank you for watching, folks. Here's Jess again.
So I agree. I hugely agree about there's just being too much burst in there. I did agree about the jungle. The thing about the jungle is like only certain champions were making that role impactful. So tuning that back actually made it so now there's more impactful champions. I feel like a role shouldn't be decided if it's strong or not based off the champ selected. The role as a whole should be strong. And that just wasn't the case. You're punished usually all the time for picking a champ that just couldn't keep up. I know ADC in preseason they were weaker, but now they just feel a lot stronger. Once again, it's one of those things where like some champions just drastically make games insane. Marksmen are all good and all, but like when you look at Kai'Sa, Vayne, like those hard scaling champs are having more impact than the ones in the early game. Now that could be to the fact that some players just might not be playing it properly, but the point still stands that some of these roles just are super strong based off the specific champions. And I don't think that that's a role thing. I think like that's just right tuning the champions. All champions should be impactful, not all roles, because I think that's going in the wrong direction. You can't have, let's say, top lane, oh, it's super impactful, it's super strong, but then you got champs like Singed and Teemo who can't do anything. You know what I mean? So I think they just might be taking the wrong approach here, and they're looking at stats based off the roles instead of like really paying attention to the underlying problem, which are the champions in the role. Either nerf some of those champions back so that they fit more in line with the other ones, or rework some of these champions and stop releasing so many until we get the lineup fixed, because it just feels like some champs are being left in the dust. Some champions can't compete in the meta. Some roles are just too strong for certain champions, but certain champions find it super weak. Some certain types of champions can't be anywhere. Like bot lane, recently, all I've been seeing are mages and hook champs, which leaves the enchanters kind of missed a little bit. Why? Because they're not as impactful as the other ones. Because as I said, it's certain champs that's making things seem a lot stronger than they are. Same thing with the items. Like some of the items are super strong, like Gorge Drinker. Like that's cool and that's fine, but it's really strong on champions. It's not just strong on every single player that builds it. And that's what I mean. We're focusing on the wrong topic here. It's not about the roles. It's not about the items. It's about some of these champions. They're just too dang strong. And when we're not focusing on that, all we're doing is just nerfing roles and buffing roles. And some of the champs that are just really, really good are taking a huge advance of the roles that are buffed. And some of the champs that are very good, if the role's nerfed, are still good. But the champs that weren't good when it was strong, like at that even baseline because the role is strong, now getting pushed down to like just being underdogs while the top dogs are at a balance level. And that's just not good. I feel like there needs to be more changes of the champions that are making the game different as a whole. You're never really saying, oh, that lane is always strong. That lane is so broken, like it's making the stuff hard. It's the champions in the role that everybody's complaining about. Oh, Tryndamere just dives, just does so much damage. Oh, Nasus is just this. Oh, Kai'Sa is just that. Vayne, Olaf, Aatrox, Talon, Zed, Fizz. They're not the role itself. It's those champions that are just having an issue. And so I am glad that they're taking some of that burst damage back. But once again, we're looking at the wrong things here. And I'm not a balanced person from my perspective, but just seeing the game played out, being a coach myself, and just watching a lot of these things, watching these pro plays and stuff like that, it's clear that champions are the reason why some of these roles are so strong. It's just straight clear. And they need to focus a little bit more on that, I think. But let's get back to the video. Sorry for that spiel.
All right, let's get into the client.
I just want to say, I do think that nerfing and buffing roles are good. But I just think, and items, but I just think there's not enough attention to the champions being strong sometimes. That's all I'm saying. or just how the champions work with the item or the role. And if that is there, maybe Riot's just not being as transparent as they are with the other stuff, and that's probably why I feel like that. But it's either they're not paying attention to it or they're just keeping it hidden. So I want to say they're keeping it hidden, but from what it looks like, it just seems like they're kind of ignoring that aspect sometimes because they want to make more champions. They want to make the game funner, and they're not really looking towards the competitive scene too much as a whole. I think they just started doing that this season out of 10 seasons. So I'm bearing with Riot here. I know it's some changes that they're doing, but I definitely think, like I said, it's going in the right direction. We're just not there yet. That's all I'm saying.
The client's obviously been a pretty long-standing pain point. So in the beginning of 2020, the first focus area that was clear to us was actually how much memory it was taking to kind of load each one of these screens. We then basically optimized each one of those screens and was hoping for an improved overall navigation experience. But Champ Select and End of Game screen continued to be pain points for players, and so we took a special look at them. What you should see at the end of the day is a significantly faster client compared to the start of 2020. Now, a bunch of you have kind of mentioned, the social panel is still an issue for you. All those issues that you see with friends not showing up, things like that, we're going to be addressing that this year. The second thing that we're going to be looking into is stability. We've seen kind of the crash reports that players have been sharing with us, so we want to take a pretty firm stance and actually do a full burn down on all the crashes, and so we're going to be addressing a lot of those too.
I agree. I feel like their client definitely needs some work, but you hear her, she like, the thing is, there's so much to work on in this game. As small as this game might seem, like, oh, there's just this map, there's that. There's a lot going on in the background of League. And I think sometimes just the fairness of some of these champions and some of these roles just take the back burner. You see how long it took for them to say, hey, we're going to be doing paying attention to the client. It took, what, 10 years almost? There was more client changes, but like, they never like honed in on like trying to fix it. It was like, oh, we're just changing it. Oh, we're trying to do something a little different. Oh, and that's what I mean. Like these last 2 years coming in, like Riot's really been trying to drill on stuff. And that's why I think that I think they deserve a little bit more leeway sometimes. A behavior as well. Like they're just drilling on a lot of other stuff now that they should have done before, but now it's all backed up. Some of the stuff just gets pushed to that back burner. Unfortunately, or some of the stuff is just barely touched right now and then it comes back later. And that's what I mean about these champions. Like they're having to like play catch up, and I give them the benefit of the doubt because that's not what they were doing before, and I'm glad to see them doing it now. But that's pretty much what I'm referring to when I said in my last comment.
Next, I want to touch on game clarity. Game clarity is one of those things that all the teams kind of work on in a more evergreen way for any of the content that they make. But we want to bring up this topic right now because it's been over 10 years and we've pushed a lot of champions and skins to the game. And so what we want to make sure we don't betray is kind of that level of competitive integrity where now characters might be unreadable or hard to understand what they do or how do you play against them.
She just said it right there. It's literally what I just said. They don't pay attention to this stuff, and now they're playing catch up. She just said she released so many skins, and or they released so many skins, and now we're having to basically make sure it's keeping the competitive scene. Hey, I understand. That's why I said I give them that leeway, but we're not where we should be. But we're definitely going. We're going, and that's what I like to see from the game.
Input into that framework is the silhouette. It's the foundation for all of our champions, and we want to make sure that each and every champion has a distinct silhouette. So for example, take Senna. Senna is one of those champions that her silhouette is kind of defined by her ginormous gun. And so you can kind of understand that that gun is her source of power. And what we can do is kind of stretch all the other elements that kind of surround her abilities, because at the end of the day, the enemy knows that it's all going to be coming from this gun. I'll also give a counterexample. Lee Sin is a pretty tough character to actually make skins for, not because he's a complex character by any means, but actually because he has very few distinguishing factors about him. But his animations are what makes him really Lee Sin. And so when we were creating Dragonmancer Lee Sin, it was actually pretty tough. What ended up happening is, when the skin reached PvE, people were starting to notice that they couldn't really recognize that this was Lee Sin. And that was a little bit hard for them to kind of play against. As we saw that feedback come in, we made adjustments, and Dragonmancer Lee Sin is better for it now, but that's the kind of problem that I'm kind of alluding to when we're describing the importance of working around a silhouette of a champion, but also being cognizant of like each of the pieces and how they contribute to the readability of a champion. Next on the list is a new thematic called Space Groove. Space Groove is this kind of wacky, retro-futuristic thematic that we've been really excited to see come to life. It also includes a new champion that will be joining that skin line. And this is the infamous top lane skirmisher that you may have heard of at season start as well. Lastly, we're going to have One For All actually join in with the event. And so for all the One For All lovers who have been asking for this, it's your time to shine. The game mode will be up, and that's it for me. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this kind of provides more context on what we're working on and what we're looking to improve. Feel free to give any feedback for all of it, and see you on the Rift.
That's just pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed. That's my thoughts on the video. If you guys have any thoughts of your own, please let me know in the comments below. Maybe I'm wrong about what I'm saying, or maybe that you guys agree with what I'm saying. Let me know, please, because I would like to read your comments. I always read your comments, and I always listen to what you guys want or what you guys want more of. I'm very, as I said, in tune of making sure you guys are getting the content that you guys want. So don't shy away from letting me know what you guys want. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, you know what I always say. Thank you for approaching this like a coach.